Morning all. I had an interesting game last night playing for Muswell Chess Club in the Middlesex League, playing at home to West London Chess Club, a player called Jezierski. He kicked off with E4. I was playing on board 1. They defaulted actually a few boards unfortunately, so the match situation was already quite favourable to Muswell. So anyway, C5, he plays C3 Sicilian, Knight F6, which is the most common move actually, Knight F6 for those interested, by a little bit, 9,600 compared to D5 which is 8,200, and then E6. So Knight F6, a bit of Nze4 provocation, a bit like the Sicilian Defence, but very useful here because White's played C3. It makes it kind of more effective to play this kind of Sicilian Defence strategy. Now here, usually players with White will play E5. That's the most popular, but he played a very, very rare move, Bishop D3. Very rare in live books. We're kind of out of book for the most part already. It looks a little bit like a Kopek system, this Bishop D3, as though maybe White wants a kind of Roy Lopez type position later. If White can play for D4 later, put the bishop on C2. I played Knight C6 after Knight F3. Actually, we're back in a sort of more trendy position by transposition, where usually there's 500 games apparently with D6. I played quite a committal move, E5. This might be quite controversial. It weakens the D5 square, and usually apparently Bishop B5 is played in this position. Apparently it's okay for black though. The evaluation here is slight advantage to black here after Bishop B5, believe it or not. Knight takes, for example, Knight takes E4 like this. This apparently is okay. The engine suggests it's okay for black as well, this position. So anyway, let's go back. So after E5, quite committal, he actually castled, and I did strike out with D5 in the centre. I thought it was kind of justified in the position to get the queen out early, to in the centre, because like the Knight F6 is more justified. With the pawn on C3, the queen's actually quite useful, I thought there. But let's see what happens if Rook E1. So takes, I can apparently take, and I checked, I looked at this during the game and I'm just wondering what the engine thinks about this position. As long as maybe I don't have to play F6. If F6, that's kind of a weakening move, you don't want to play D4, and that's good, almost good for White. But apparently, yeah, Queen D5 here, and now I think any D4 might be answerable. Black can castle queenside. And if C4, we could just take here. This should be okay for black. There's a pin, which is very useful here. So knight takes, we can just take on E5 and use the pin. Okay, so anyway, I played D5, and okay, Rook E1 wasn't played. E takes, Queen takes. So the conception here I thought was okay. Actually the engine suggests that black is okay here, but engines are not really usually good in openings, but he is moving a piece twice now with Bishop B5. Perhaps better is something like, well, Bishop C2 if he's going to move that piece twice, or Queen E2. But Bishop B5, I just play E4, and apparently, so this is like, is White using a provocation strategy here? Knight E1 is suggested, maybe the idea is like this, but he actually played Rook E1, and I thought the knight's run out of squares. I'm almost going to win a piece here with Bishop E7. Now before we look at Bishop E7, which is the game continuation, let's also have a look at this engine suggestion, Bishop E6. Apparently it's stronger. So it does block that pin, so the knight's threatened. There's Knight H4, there's G5, and if C4 here, Queen D3, I think the knight is ultimately getting lost eventually. Like here, the knight's going to give itself up without too much compensation. So it seems bishop e6 is pretty strong here. I thought bishop e7 is the same sort of thing, but let's also look at c4 here with the idea of d4. So moving the queen here, and then d4, e takes, and if d5, apparently this doesn't work too well for white because of bishop d6. Maybe that's the point. So the bishop, this one's shielding the e file, and this one can point at h2, which I don't think gives white time for g3. It's fatally weakening the king here. h4, and if castles, now if taking here, bishop takes g3, and we've got f2 on the cards, that looks like slaughter time, like this. And taking on c6, again bishop takes g3. So yes, that's probably why, that explains it, why bishop e6 might actually be stronger to try and win this knight than bishop e7. Because what happened in the game, I was actually a bit worried about something here which wasn't played. In the game, d4 was played here, which does kind of lose the knight. I thought losing the knight under the most favourable circumstances possible is critical. So in that regard, c4, and we're looking at this after the game, queen h5, d4. So the idea to play for d5 here, and you'll see the difference that this bishop's not, on h2. Apparently black might be okay. The engine suggests black might be okay if castling, d takes. There is a kind of attacking prospect with the knight missing here. h2 is still vulnerable, so knight g3. And what's the point? Say h3. Blimey, this is very tactical. Knight takes f2, and if king takes, there's bishop h4 check. And then there's slaughter time, bishop takes h3. Wow. So it's like white's king side is being mashed up here. This looks very unpleasant for white. It's hugely winning for black, it seems. So yeah, there is a downside not having the knight on f3 here, this h2 square. Even if white wins the piece back with d5, this seems to be a very, very dangerous position. So even not bothering about this, just going for it. So the actual best move here, actually queen takes apparently. Seems check. Queen h4 now threatens knight h2. Check. Queen h5. Yeah, clearly black's doing fantastically. So anyway, in the game, that wasn't actually played though, c4 after bishop e7. In fact, d4 was played, and I seem to be less controversially winning a piece. I just take the piece. I'm wondering, okay, it's up to white to prove this compensation. Initially I thought rook e5 could be a pain for d5. So a quick look at this. Now queen d6 might run into, I thought bishop f4, but that still might be playable as well. Queen d7, does that run into d5? Well no, there's a pin on the queen, so black can just castle. Yeah, it's yeah, and if c4, bishop d6, the rook moves, queen g4. Yeah, the king side is always an issue here, it seems. So anyway, he played c4, and I'm just kind of a piece up here. Queen takes f3, but there is an issue about c6. Possibly, apparently, bishop d7 is okay here. I played a move which is also okay apparently, bishop g4, with the idea that after bishop takes c6, I don't want to take on c6 here. That's not the idea. White would actually be better here, winning the A8 rook. No, the idea here is to play King F8. I'm a piece up. Temporary inconvenience, I thought. He plays Queen B3. I take my piece. Queen B7. I've got to be careful about. If I play Queen D8, I think there's rook. Well, I thought there was rook takes E7. No, there isn't. During the game, I thought avoid that, but there's Queen D1 check here. Of course, White's back row is weak. Not very good calculation there. Anyway, I thought rook E8 was better, and the engine thinks rook E8 is better. Simple, just rook E8 anyway. Because you don't want, in principle, the rook hanging. On Queen D8, maybe White. Okay, White doesn't want to get mated. White plays something like Bishop F4. So, alright, and there might be something emerging, because my rooks are not connected. There's a kind of difficulty to play this position as long as my rooks are not connected. So anyway, I played rook E8, giving up A7, the A7 pawn, and it's quite spectacular here. I thought there was some implication of getting onto H2 early on to try and induce a weakness, but there's something rather spectacular here which the engine comes up with, which I just thought wasn't that great. Well, I played Bishop D6, which is okay. It's starting to look at H2 even without the rooks connected, but White hasn't developed yet, and my opponent apparently is in a very bad position here. If he takes, then either taking with the knight or the king even is okay. White's back row is weak, so again there's not much time to do this. The back row is weak. So anyway, my opponent played Bishop E3, and I was looking at this position. I was looking at it, and I was looking at it, and looking at it. I mean, it must have been quite a few minutes, and I come up with a move which I thought, in principle, is okay. But I just wonder, you know, if you can see a win from this sort of position, then, you know, a forced win, then maybe that makes one a very good player, or at least tactical, very strong tactically. I thought I'm reasonable at tactics, but this is just amazing what the engine comes up with here. I mean, I see some parts of the jigsaw puzzle here that Queen B2 seems to be implying knight A3, because otherwise there's rook E3. That's one part of the jigsaw here. I'll just show you that. You know, Queen takes B2, say knight D2. I think rook takes E3 is just about playable. Say there's a check, then the rook can move back. The knight's protecting it, and say rook takes, then we can take on A1. And the main point I wanted to really show is taking here, we could take on D2. So assume that knight E3 is forced here, and this I just didn't see at all. I didn't know what the problem is in my mind's eye last night with this position. What the specific problem was. Apparently rook takes E3 is crushing. So let's have a look. F takes. Oh no, there's another variation which is similar to this, but there's a killer move here. No, I missed this totally. This is why engines are so amazing tactically. Can you see a killer move in this position? I'll give you a clue. How do you celebrate the queen being temporarily on the 7th rank here? We often see rooks on the 7th having a devastating effect, but the queen is like a virtual rook or even more powerful. So how to celebrate the queen on the 7th rank in this variation? There's actually a very crushing tactical blow here. I'll give you 100 points for one of them and 200 points for the other. One is more crushing than the other to celebrate the queen on the 7th rank. So what would you play here as black? Okay, the most incisive move come up with the engine is actually bishop f3, believe it or not. Because look at this bishop and the queen on h2. So if g takes, queen takes h2, now knight h5 is a forced mate in 5 apparently. Say check, check. The check's run out. And then white gets desperate. White, knight g3 is mating. So that's even more incisive. So 200 points for that and 100 points for this, because this one allows the queen to rescue the situation slightly by protecting g2. Here black is still winning though, apparently. Bishop d7, and then the point is here taking on a3. So the reason I mentioned this variation, I just didn't see anything concrete. I thought intuitively this doesn't look right for white's weak back row, and then I was kind of looking at queen e5 or queen f4 using that pin, and I eventually played queen f4 just to provoke, you know, weaknesses. So if takes, I take here just to provoke light square weaknesses, because I've got an extra bishop which is handy on the light squares, and I can sort of go back here and protect c5. That was my plan. But it's just interesting that also apparently queen e5, and we have the same sort of tactical reason that the engine doesn't let go of the opportunity to make use of the queen across the 7th rank. I think we can learn tactically from engines. It seems things we would just consider assumed to be insignificant are of major tactical significance. I mean, obviously they're seeing millions of positions a second, but I looked at this position, I just didn't see anything concretely. But again, there's a similar kind of pattern of trying to get the queen and the bishops communicating across this 7th rank. So here, queen takes b2, and what does white do? If knight d2, we have just rook takes e3. Either we're going to take here or take on d2. That's simple enough. So we'll go with the knight a3 again here. And can you see the crushing blow in this position? I guess one's always got to calculate the checks as well here with the king in a sense, but rook takes e3. So check would go back, and if takes here, we'd take that. And if f takes again, we get this communication going between the queen across the 7th rank. Now bishop f3 is again more incisive than bishop h3 because we're protecting c6. So bishop f3 is apparently a mate in 5. It's a forced mate in 5. What is white doing? Yeah, I don't know. You know, I've been looking at this for a few minutes. I didn't see this. It's like shocking how there's less solidity in white's position than I'd imagined here, and I just came content with queen f4. Still, a win is a win is a win. If I can just win slowly, as I say, mountain climbing metaphor, we're often not finding the best scientific moves, but I find it's fascinating what these scientific moves actually demonstrate in terms of the resources of the position. You know, the queen on the 7th, that temporary gaze is actually worth something, and as humans, unless we can concretely see how, then we kind of assume it's not. So I played this intuitive move just to generate a light square weakness. So g3, I go back here. And intuitively I want to sort out my rooks. He plays knight d2. Now here's another point. I rejected h5 because I thought, well, h4 and my rooks are still kind of the problem. But here actually, this is okay apparently for g6, just to put the king here, and then the rooks will be okay, happy, talking to each other. Hello, hello. So now I played actually and the engine actually likes this now at depth 18. G5. This is what I played, just to put the king here to connect the rooks quickly. F3. I thought this is my opponent's trying to encourage G4 for bishop H3 check, bishop H6 check. Pardon me. So bishop takes, for example, and this is actually blowing significantly my advantage apparently with just knight takes F3. Which exposes some other problems. Bishop takes C5, and actually white is now better here from an engine perspective. You can see the problem with the disconnected rooks. White is apparently better already. Bishop takes, queen takes here, queen takes G5, everything's dropping off. Horrible. And then rook F1. It's a total disaster. So I'm glad I didn't take there. It seems, yes, that would be a total disaster, taking on F3. I reasoned that it seemed to be giving the opponent counter. I didn't see how devastating that would be actually. I think I was looking at something else, not knight takes F3. I looked at this, which doesn't work at all actually, because rook takes E3. I was thinking I'm embarrassed to say I was thinking this and then this. My calculation just wasn't there, it seems. But anyway, intuitively I just didn't want to get involved in that. I thought bishop H3 was good enough, and the engine likes bishop H3. I just thought, I'm piece up. I don't need to try and encourage the opponent's piece activity at all. Just plonk the bishop here as a kind of goal hanging bishop around the goal, looking at the weakened light squares, G2 in particular. And that's fine, I don't need to do any of this. So I guess that's why I wasn't great on calculating that. But anyway, let's proceed. So bishop H3, I'm still a piece up, haven't given the opponent tons of counterplay. I'm one move away from connecting rooks, so it's pretty rosy. Plays queen A4, and I think, how do I defend this pawn now? Because if I go back, I could be harassed with this other pawn or something, or knight E4. So say I go back, blimey, it's actually the evaluation for black drops dramatically to less than the pawn, apparently on queen D7, because of course bishop takes G5. I can't do that. It's losing a critical pawn. It's not that good. It's not that hot. No, I thought that on queen B7 I've been planning this, that I just really want to get my rooks going together. So and these are double pawns anyway, so they're not worth as much as all that. I thought if I can get my rooks doubled, so king G7, to offer that to quickly double rooks in the centre. And believe it or not, I remembered some comments from you guys on YouTube on the engine controversy, one of the Ivanov games, where some of the comments were suggesting, this pawn sacrifice over the queen side was logical to double rooks in the centre. And I remember that as a tactical theme, to sack a pawn for the doubling of rooks. And it seems to crop up here, and I thought it kind of reassured me, yeah, this is a great way to play a positional sack here, just to double my rooks in the centre and try and crash through the 7th rank. So queen takes C6, rook E6. I want to double my rooks and try and crash through to the 7th rank. Also, I am threatening bishop takes G3 to hit the queen, which was actually ignored here with bishop F2. So either bishop takes G3 looks tempting, or just doubling rooks looks tempting. Apparently this is technically stronger. It's actually the move I play, just this. I didn't see anything really that much, I think, wrong with bishop takes G3. I think taking here, take here, and black is still doing great, apparently. So there was nothing wrong with that either. I played this, which apparently is technically stronger, but this is the plan, to try and, if I can get to F3, but F3 is guarded, so I need to get my queen coordinating with the bishop, which could have happened a lot earlier in this game, of course, as we saw from the engine perspective. He plays now queen B7. And apparently there's a simple knockout blow here with almost rook takes e1, takes, queen d3. You can see f1 is also eyed with the bishop and queen. And black is now threatening also queen e2 to coordinate bishop and queen on g2. And this is pretty decisive stuff. White will be busted here. So anyway, I played queen d3, which is still okay. I haven't lost my advantage totally. Rook e d1. I was actually hoping for knight b3. For the wrong reasons. I was thinking knight e4 as a cute interruption tactic of f3. So say takes here. Now the reason I'm actually emphasizing my own intentions despite being tactically flawed, apparently a good game annotator, according to Cecil Purdy, and I gleaned this the other day, should show the intentions of the players involved in the game as almost as a higher priority than all the potential improvements, because Purdy argued that most chess games are full of missed opportunities and improvements. So it's nice, I think, for me, I think what he's saying, the empathy needs to be strong with the players, what they were thinking. And if you, because you're kind of respecting the players, and obviously it's easier for me to convey this in my own game that I was thinking knight e4, but there's actually obviously a major improvement here in rook takes e1 check. This is just a forced mate in 2. Now maybe if I'd reached this position I would have spotted this as an improvement. It is a slight improvement, yeah, mating on f1. But I thought I'd mention that this is apparently in the art of annotation. You're supposed to convey what the players were thinking, and yeah, I thought the cute interruption tactic. Yeah, but black is winning, you know. In any case, I mean, it's quite a crushing position. So he played rook e d1, and here it's interesting for rook e2. Let's have a quick look at rook e2. Knight e4, queen takes f3, and this was pointed out in the post-mortem by Tom Villiers, a very, very strong, promising tactical player. It's got a town-like style, and he found this resource for white, but it's still better for black. Can you see a fantastic resource for white here? And I must confess to totally miscalculating this, because I thought in my mind's eye knight takes d6 here, but actually, of course, queen takes f2 is mating, so knight takes d6 is not a valid resource, but there is actually a more valid resource for white. Can you spot it? Which is still lost for white anyway. Okay, queen takes f7. I think this was pointed out by Tom. So the idea of this knight fork. So white is avoids getting mated for the moment, but still +6 to black. But the engine actually rejects rook e2 as there's something, I mean, not the strongest move. Apparently, okay, knight f1. Or no, it's actually that line. White thinks that actually rook b8, which is what I played intuitively, is apparently technically stronger. So if knight e4 attacking the queen, just queen takes f3 here. And you might think this queen takes f7 tactic. Oh, there's a difference here, king h6. So we're still mating white. Yeah. It's a bit academic, all this, really. Okay, rook b8, queen c6, rook takes b2. I'm just crashing through now. So finally trying to get my queen mowing the 7th rank here. Bishop takes c5. And I played rook takes d2. That's enough for winning. There's nothing going on here. After rook takes d2, queen takes d2. It's over. My opponent actually forfeited on time. But say bishop f2, then there's always now bishop takes g3 at minimum. Bishop takes g3 is enough. Yeah, so it was a fun game. But as far as passing the engine technical tests for accuracy, I kind of obviously messed up here, and we were all convinced that this was a way of playing was for white was with an improvement, was this idea of c4, and apparently, yeah, we all not seen these tactical continuations of the engine down the pub often. I mean, I think the engines are just a nightmare in tactical positions. They would just totally embarrass any human tactically. It's amazing what they see, the coordination of pieces, the tactical vulnerabilities. It's all exposed quite evidently in the variations that engines see, and it just becomes very embarrassing after to look at a game and all the thoughts of it kind of torn to shreds as just being very unsound, silly continuations. But anyway, the gist of the game, positionally, it worked out how I wanted. Then I weakened the light squares, and I kind of doubled rooks at the cost of another pawn. So it all kind of worked out okay in the end. Comments or questions on YouTube? Thanks very much.